So yeah, um, there's a lot to unpack here, and it's kind of interesting because the tale of Jalen Hurts and having a new offense coordinator, all those excuses, they're just going to keep rolling. The Eagles have had seven; they will have seven different offensive play callers in the last 7 years. I don't think there's any other NFL team that has had that had those results, and it definitely, definitely raises an eyebrow here for me as a fan. And it's like, you start to wonder, like, okay, is Sirianni the problem? Is Jalen Hurts the problem? Whatever it is. But obviously, you can see it here. Doug Peterson, he got fired. Sirianni in 2021 was the play caller. They actually had a decent year. They made the playoffs surprisingly that year. Shane Steichen took over. He left their head coach job. Then Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, Kellen Moore, obviously also. The two things that stick out to me, you had the two Super Bowl runs, Shane Steichen and then Kellen Moore. Both those guys obviously went on to be head coaches, understandably so. But it's like it's a little interesting. And it's definitely going to be interesting when it comes to the search of this next offensive coordinator because you have Brian Johnson in 2023 and Kevin Patullo in 2025. Both of these guys were very close with Jalen Hurts. They pretty much worked together every day before they took over that play calling. So obviously, Brian Johnson was the quarterback coach, who then got elevated, and Kevin Patullo was the pass game coordinator. So they were really working together. And those are the two guys you could argue that knew them the most, or that knew these guys the most. I mean, obviously, you hire Shane Steichen, you hire Kellen Moore. Both those guys just came in. They were 1 year guys, and then, all right, they're done. So the internal hire has not played in favor of the Eagles, and I don't think that they will have another internal hire. Scott Loeffner, the QB coach, has been rumored as a potential suitor, but doesn't make sense. I think Jalen Hurts honestly adapts best when he has somebody who is a known offensive mind and a guy that is going to really bring the best out of him. And I don't know if an internal hire does that. Internal hires kind of, specifically, Patullo, the pass game coordinator, like he's studying film. He's trying to, make sure that side of the offense is working. But when, that's only one part. And then, Jalen Hurts is not running with his legs at all. He's not doing any of that. So I don't really know. There's no one answer. It's just kind of interesting to me how this pattern, and you could kind of dig deep into it. And then obviously he's going to have his 11th different play caller in his 11th season since he started college. So, I mean, you can't imagine how hard that must be. I mean, you could fight for this guy saying, he's got to learn 11 different playbooks in 11 years. I mean, like, I don't think the average human being can do that. It's just, I don't really know what it means. I mean, you see some of these college, maybe these comments, maybe he's the problem. I don't know. I don't think he is. I don't think he's the problem at all. And there's going to be a lot of debates, right, on what is going to be the next move. But obviously, yeah, hits right there. So Schefter reported on it, and I think it's just interesting to see, like what's next, right? What's next for the Eagles team, and who's it going to be? But I do think it's important to know. I don't think it's as easy of a it's going to be him type of thing. I don't think it's like that. I think you have to go down with all the factors and say, okay, this is more than just finding a known offensive mind who's just going to be able to whip this team back into Super Bowl shape. It's not what it is. Because what it is you have all these decisions to make and all these questions to answer, not just the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator is going to be, there's definitely going to be someone, there's a lot of guys you can name, right? I mean, let's look up, Eagles offensive coordinator news. Offensive coordinator candidates, because I mean I could name a bunch, but here's 11. NBC Sports Philadelphia, Kevin Patullo fired. This is just an hour ago, and there's a lot. A lot to go down the line, but Patullo was never the answer. They never found their rhythm. You could say it's really interesting, right? But like I said with that job, I think they fill the hole within the next week. I don't think it's going to be a long hunt. But I think the hunt you're going to have many factors that play into the hunt. One, what is Jalen Hurts' play style? What are you going to build this offense around? Because most offensive coordinators that come in, they're apparently it's going to be a known offensive mind. So that guy that comes in is going to have an offense he likes to run. As a person, he likes to run. It's a known offense that's going to probably has worked. So he has their play style, but will Jalen Hurts be able to adapt? Can Jalen Hurts figure it out? Because this year, it didn't seem like they had a play style. Kevin Patullo didn't really know what it was going to be. I mean, you have a 1,000-yard drop off in Saquon Barkley's numbers, so it wasn't okay. We're going to be run first. It wasn't really like we're going to be pass first either. Yes, Jalen Hurts did, single season touchdown person best for him this year. Um, like he looked okay in certain aspects, but it didn't seem like, yeah, this is pass first. AJ Brown's gonna be explosive. You do have 2,000-yard receivers. I get those accolades, but when you watch the games, it just doesn't really speak to you that way. So going down the line, who is it gonna be? Todd Monken. He's already interviewed for the Bucks coordinator job. He could be a guy. I mean, 60 years old, 59 years old. He has the experience, right? No doubt about that. He has the results as well with Lamar Jackson. I mean, obviously they didn't make it to a Super Bowl or anything, but I mean, he's developed Lamar Jackson. He's played with Lamar Jackson. I mean, he knows that Lamar Jackson uses his legs. He can get, Jalen Hurts to maybe be more elusive with the ball and have a better plan with him. Although one interesting thing I saw on WIP just a little bit ago is they said, okay, well, is Jalen Hurts going to be use his legs if he doesn't have a contract? Because, a long-term injury could ruin his, the rest of his career. So that's an interesting development. That is not too surprising at all. Then there's obviously Mike McDaniel. Was the San Francisco offense coordinator, had some good Super Bowl, had some success there. Vic Fangio actually worked for McDaniel, so it'd be neat to have two coordinators that come from similar place, know the dynamic, that they're on the same page, getting both their respective sides of the ball in shape. He's obviously the obvious guy, but is that going to work with Jalen Hurts? And a lot of people are saying no, they don't think. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski doesn't seem likely. I'm sure he's going to get a head coach job elsewhere. Cliff Kingsbury is another interesting development, but I mean, you saw how it went. I mean, working with Kyler Murray. He's not. I don't think he's gonna land a head coaching job. But he did have success with Jaden Daniels. Things worked with him. I think he's a very good offensive mind. I wouldn't be mad if that's the route they go. But I do think that the route they go, it has to be a comprehensive understanding of what is Jalen Hurts going to be able to do. What is Jalen Hurts going to be able to? How are you going to manage this? You need to know how to use him. Shane Steichen in 2022 knew how to use Hurts. They were a pass-first offense they were able to have explosive plays with pretty much the same exact playmakers. I mean, and you have even a better running back now. So, I mean, the team's on paper, like I said yesterday, the team's only gotten better since since they first had their success in 2022. And then obviously in 2024 with Kellen Moore, I mean, Jalen Hurts looked amazing. So there's a lot of things, especially in that Super Bowl. Dable's a guy that you're like, okay, maybe it works, but he was Hurts's coordinator in Alabama for a year. I mean, I don't know if it's unlikely. I don't know how likely it is. I wouldn't necessarily mind it. He has a very good offensive mind. Work with Josh Allen. So again, there's a lot of good options, but I think you got to jump on it quickly. Nate Shieldhasi, pass game coordinator. Again, it's a guy that hasn't really called plays. Obviously, you can look at his, what they had beforehand when you have Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua. It's an explosive offense. It's a good offense. I think this is like, when you have a defining decision like this for your franchise that could really decide the next 3 to 5 years with Jalen Hurts and how long he is the Eagles quarterback, you want to bring in a coordinator. And another thing to note, you want to bring in a coordinator that's like Vic Fangio. They're kind of, maybe they won't really go for a head coaching job, but you can count on them being here, because I think the last thing the Eagles need, I mean, it's like upgrading a new iPhone getting a new iPhone every year. I just don't think you can afford to have another offensive coordinator the year after that. You need a guy that's going to be here for at least more than a season. And Nate Shieldhasi could be a good guy, just trying to build a name for himself before he can get a head coaching job. I just don't know. I think it's too much of a rookie hire, and in this scenario, you need someone that's going to be a known hire. Zach Robinson's another interesting choice, but I just don't like it. I don't think they're even going to really look at something like that. again, just another assistant, was the Falcons offense coordinator, but it just never really worked out. When you have guys that have failed before, at their job, like, just haven't really had the results, I just think you got to stay away from them. Kafka's another very interesting guy. Um, it could work. I just don't really know. Was the Giants offensive coordinator. Then was over in I think he was in Baltimore. He just jumped all over the place. He's an offensive minded head coach, but again, I just don't really know how much of a proven mind he is. And then David Shaw could be interesting. Mike LaFleur, I think, is probably going to get a head coaching job. But I do believe he would be a good guy. And then Frank Reich's probably the most interesting candidate in my opinion. Frank Reich is a very, very known offensive mind. He was like, it's just, I don't know how the dynamic works because Sirianni worked for Reich. I mean, then you're going to have Reich work for Sirianni. It just doesn't make sense. I think I wouldn't mind him, and I'm surprised they haven't done it already. I wouldn't mind him being like, a senior advisor type of offensive role for this team, but I just don't see him, it making sense as, to be the offensive coordinator. So, I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if it's none of these guys. Like they could have someone who, it's none of these guys, but I think that this specific offensive coordinator job, it's like a Penn State head coaching job in college football. It's like it's just, I don't know how much of an appealing job it is, how much of a, if I'm a guy who, some of these guys are already set. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make, like, Monken, obviously, with Harbaugh going, he's going to go somewhere else. That makes sense if he leaves. But, like, Stefanski can pursue a head coaching job. Dable, I just don't know. I don't really know where it's actually going to go. But it's not as easy as it's going to seem. And I'll tell you that. I think that there's so much more to it, especially when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts. You just never really know, right? And there's just so much more to the story than just, okay, we're gonna have it off. Like the Kellen Moore hire last year, it was like okay, like Jalen Hurts is still like he's 2 years younger at the time. You have that Super Bowl success, but this is like an unusual pattern that you just don't really like. You don't really know how it's gonna work, and I don't think AJ Brown goes anywhere. I think that the Patullo firing also plays into AJ Brown because AJ Brown wasn't. Let's bring up AJ Brown's stats real quick, but he had a very, very rough stretch, in the mid-season. And that was when I think the one thing, I was actually talking to my friend about this. It's like, well, the Eagles are always in these fights, whatever. I don't think that's what it was. I think AJ Brown knows Nick Sirianni as a coach, knows that what he's capable of, figuring out. And I just think he wanted him to take that accountability, fix something with Patullo, and it just didn't end up working. Let's get this up right here. It didn't end up working, so I think the AJ Brown firing actually probably makes things better for the AJ Brown scenario, and I think he ends up coming back. I mean, he's probably the best receiver the Eagles have had in the in the 21st century. So yeah, look, this is just his stats. You have a very, very rough stretch, week 4 week 4, pretty much that Buccaneers game. Not that I'll say from the Denver game to the Detroit game. I mean, he went a month with not really getting the ball. And it's just unhappy. Like, the offensive struggles were really evident, in this stretch. You're averaging less than 20 points a game, probably like 15 points a game, 17, 17, 22. 28, 10, and 16. Like, it just wasn't clicking. And then the Eagles offense really never clicked. It seemed like they maybe were figuring things out in the late half of the season, but let's be honest, it just never clicked. So I think AJ Brown being upset, he was upset with Sirianni. When you have, when the offense wins, but it was mainly like the defense that's winning them in these games. Like, I mean, I'm expecting, these 2 losses, AJ Brown's like, we got to make an adjustment. And they did make an adjustment against the Vikings. That was a good adjustment. Then, you went on to win 2 like kind of okay games, but it wasn't like this offense is looking good. And I think the one thing Nick Sirianni struggled with the most was taking that accountability and trying to fix something with Patullo. Maybe they did. Maybe they sat in a meeting room at NovaCare and, tried figuring something out. But it just never really seemed like that was the case. And I think that's where AJ Brown was upset. I think that's where the struggles kind of it just had to release when they lost against the Niners. on Sunday night. He didn't want to speak to the media. I understand. I just think it was a really rough way to end a really rough season, and I just don't think you can really blame him. I don't think you really can. I don't think he goes anywhere, though. I think he's too good of a player to go anywhere. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, bottom line, this team, I just don't think. I think it's really rough sailing for them, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly what the Eagles do in the coming days with this offensive coordinator situation. It's going to be a long and fun offseason. We're going to cover the draft, get some mock drafts going to you guys soon. But that's going to be it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.